Hello everybody, thank you as always for having me. We are studying Alshech Kabbalah, which is just the Kabbalah of the Ari with the commentary, the explanation by Rav Yehuda Alshech, who is known by his Nom de Geulah, which is the Bala Sulam. This is the book we're learning from, which is a series of excerpts from all of his introductory articles. We've been at this for a while now, so I'm just going to jump right into the book, but we are trying to have the words that we read affect us emotionally and spiritually, and so what that even means is a whole conversation in itself. But let's just jump into the excerpts, and we will start the discussion as we move forward. Okay. The essence of Judaism is the spiritual practice of believing. Believing defies what the ego understands. The essence of Judaism is the spiritual practice of believing. Believing defies what the ego understands. Okay, so this is a really good place to start when we study Kabbalah, because there's something about belief that is for the modern person is almost embarrassing, because we believe that there's science and then there's faith, and faith means that you're believing in things, and so believing in things means that you don't have any proof that they exist, and everybody seems to believe in everything. There's all these different gods, and people believe in all different things, and so when you have to rely on belief, we are sometimes we're like embarrassed to admit that. And yet, here we are being told that the essence of spiritual development is belief. So why is that? So the reason is it's very mysterious, but it's also very understandable once you decode it, is that we are trapped in our ego. Lower consciousness is a kind of prison, and the prison is our ego, our selfishness. We have something. Our egos serve a purpose, and we have a lot to discuss to explain why we need our egos. The ego never goes away, but at the same time, we have to understand that the ego hides a lot of information from us. A lot of what is out there in the universe goes unseen, and the reason is that our ego does not allow us to see things that are not beneficial to the self. So that is why the Kabbalists tell us that if we want to break free of lower consciousness and we want to step outside our ego and transcend our limitations, there's really no way to do that other than believing that the higher we go, the better things will get, and the more unified and the more loving and the more altruistic the world will become. And so in order for us to climb that ladder of consciousness, the Baal Sulam is called the master of the ladder. In order to climb this ladder of consciousness, the Kabbalists tell us that we have to believe, we have to ignore what our ego is telling us and listen to what the words that the Kabbalists wrote are telling us. And then by doing that, we will be able to leave Mitzrayim, leave Egypt, exit our egos, and find unity, love, balance, compassion, all the things that we're striving for, fulfillment, all the things that we want in life are ultimately only found outside of our selfishness. Okay, let's move forward. Any questions? Okay. It takes a great deal of spiritual work to realize the importance of transcending self-serving pleasure. Okay, I'll read it again. It takes a great deal of spiritual work to realize the importance of transcending self-serving pleasure. So much of the self-help that we are exposed to today is all about focusing on ourselves, focusing on our own happiness. And here the Kabbalists are telling us that we have to do a tremendous amount of work to exit our self-serving need for pleasure and to try to find pleasure in higher things, in unity, in other people's pleasure, in other people's fulfillment. And so it's just very telling that in this final generation, in this generation that we're in now, everything is about trying to find self-fulfillment and fulfillment inside of our egos. And as we see, it's the more a person tries to fulfill themselves, to find happiness within their selfishness, the worse they feel and the more unhappy they become. And so that's why the Kabbalists tell us that this generation is the first generation that is really ready for Kabbalah. Why are we ready for Kabbalah? Because we've had the opportunity, very few people in history have had the opportunity to see what it's like to have every one of your desires fulfilled and still be unhappy. And the reason is that there's a higher desire, a desire that we have not cultivated yet. And that desire is a desire for fulfilling others and feeling pleasure from other people being fulfilled. And that sounds very scary to us, of course, but as we know, that if everybody is focusing on everybody else, then it means that everybody that you know is focusing on your happiness. So it's just almost like a switch has to be thrown. And right now, every single person is trying to make themselves as happy as possible, trying to make as much money for themselves as possible, trying to make themselves as famous as possible, trying to make themselves as popular as possible, right? But imagine a world where every single person was trying to make everybody else all those things. And we would find that if that would happen, we would find that all of a sudden that there's a world of abundance and there's no shortages of anything and that there's really no problems. The only problem we have is that we have yet to evolve spiritually to a place where we're willing to step outside of ourselves and live in other people's vessels, live in to use a Kabbalistic term, lights and vessels, to live in other people's vessels, to try to fulfill others, and by doing that, we fulfill ourselves, okay? And it sounds very hokey, but the Kabbalists are not kidding around, that is actually not only pleasurable, but infinitely more pleasurable than what we're experiencing now. And so if a person only knew that, they would become like a drug addict. They would become completely focused only on fulfilling God, fulfilling others, fulfilling everybody else around them, because they would experience such overwhelming pleasure from that they would lose their free will and would just be attached to that. That's why God made the world as 6,000 years of development, where this pleasure, this highest pleasure, is hidden from us, so that we can do the work of slowly but surely, step by step, learning ourselves and doing the actual work ourselves of transcending our ego, stepping outside of ourselves. And by that, we are able to not only receive all the pleasure that God wants to give us, but we're also able to do the work and become partners in creation. That's why God made the world the way it is. Okay, let's move forward.
You're not suggesting that you only work for other people. Is there no room for self-advancement?
So the students here, one of our star students here, is asking if the Kabbalists are saying that there's no room at all, absolutely no rule to work for yourself. And so the answer is mysterious, and the answer is that there's really no difference between those two things, because really everybody is part of you, and you are part of everybody else. It's just that in our lowest consciousness, we say in Kabbalah, the shattering of the vessels. So what do we mean when the vessels shattered? We mean that there was one vessel, one unified vessel, where everything that was pleasurable went into this vessel, and this vessel was made up of all of us, and then there was a shattering. This vessel broke, and it fell into pieces, and now each one of us feels that we're a little piece. So the difference between you and me, if you have a family and you have children and you have parents, the difference between their eating and your eating is much smaller than if some stranger is eating. So if you're walking, if you're in Manhattan or you're in London and you're walking down the street and somebody's eating pizza, you get very little pleasure from that. But if you're sitting with your family and your children are eating, and you're the one who went to work for the pizza, then you do get a lot of pleasure from them eating. So it's hard for us to appreciate that they're one and the same. And so the example they give in Kabbalah is very simple. Is imagine you love pizza and you buy a whole pizza and you try to eat the entire pizza yourself, you get a stomach ache. But if you invite 5 of your friends together and you all eat the pizza together, there's an additional quality there. And then not only is there an additional quality of you of course you're also eating pizza. But what's happening is that you're in balance now with everybody else, because you're sharing the pizza with everybody, so you're doing so many things. First of all, you're not overeating, right? and not that, but you have an infinite quality to your pleasure because everybody is getting the pleasure. Now, that's not felt to its full extent now. That's all hidden from us. But the Kabbalists tell us that the amount of pleasure that we will get in the future will be much, much greater. Let me give you here's a good way of, I think, understanding it. Imagine that all the pizza had to go through you to get to everybody. So it's not just that they're eating the pizza, it's that all of the pleasure is going through you. We always talk about that, right? That the light is coming through you and you are giving to everybody else, and so you become an overflowing cup. So the person who has an overflowing cup, they say about the Baba Sali that he had a bottle of wine and he used to wrap a towel around it. You know the story? And he used to pour from this bottle. He used to pour to every single person. He used to pour the bottle of wine. So the wine is going through him, and so it's a way of having all the wine, and not focusing on yourself. That's really what we're talking about.
But is it okay to want a pizza and go for a pizza, even though you're sharing it? That's really my question. Or should you just be sharing everything?
So, the analogy that we give, the question is, should we really, really just be focused on everybody else? So there's two things. One thing is that we live in the material plane of existence, and so we have to it says in Kabbalah that there's no necessity is non-negotiable, meaning that first a person, no bread, no Torah. First a person has to make sure that they have their own needs met. The problem is that we don't know where our needs end, and so we buy a house, let's say we buy a car or we buy clothing, not just because of the necessity of having the clothing, but we're also trying to get honor and respect and dignity and popularity out of the clothing. And so that's an imbalance because some people start to spend and spend and spend. And you see these people, especially let's say you know these women, and they're getting older and yet they can't stop. So they're buying, instead of buying a $2,000 pocketbook, now they're buying a $40,000 pocketbook, as if that is somehow going to get them their youth and their beauty and all these things. It's not going to work. And so there's a balance between the individual and the collective. And where is that balance? And so that is really what's hidden from us. And so the answer is that if you lived in a community where everybody was constantly giving to you, your fear and your focus on taking care of yourself would be greatly, greatly diminished. So if you take, let's say, like a 6-year-old kid who lives in their parents' house, they have all of those feelings, but ultimately they're not hyper-consuming, focused on their own necessity because everything is being supplied for them, right? So it's the name in Kabbalah for the creator is in Hebrew Boreh, which means the creator. Boreh, it's a Hebrew word, but it also can be broken up in two words, means bo and re, which means come and see. So those kind of questions are the right kind of questions. And what needs to happen to a person is they realize that God is saying, I want to show you that this is true, what I'm saying. And so the fact that you're saying, well, what about me? I need to, I want to, can I be working for myself? Is really, we have to really, really become good at listening to ourselves and realize, where is that question even coming from?
So the problem, I think I like the idea from the Alshech. If everybody was on the same page. But if you're in a society where you're the only person that's working for the team and nobody else is, then how do you deal with it?
You just described the exile. You just described the hurdle. If it was so easy to do this, then we would have, Mashiach would already be here. And the fact that it's taking 6,000 years is because this is what Kabbalah is. So you see people are learning Kabbalah and they're talking about all the spheros and they're naming everything, but they're not having the right conversation yet. They're not awakening to the fact that this is the conversation that we need to be having, which is to say, hey, what's going to happen to me? And so you should say that to God. Say, I want to be a giver like you, but you put me in a world where no one's going to play by those rules. So what am I, stupid? I'm going to get chewed up and spit out, right? Go try it. Try to go outside and give out. There's some religions that try to do that and they seem very, very silly. So we don't do that in Judaism, right? So first thing we start off by saying is start by having your necessities met. The second thing we say, that's why in Kabbalah, in the old world, they say, first get married, first get a job, all the things that you're supposed to do before you start learning Kabbalah, okay? But when a person says, why would God make a world like this, and what's the point of all this, and what is Mashiach going to really do when he gets here, that's a person who's ready to learn Kabbalah. And so what the Baal Sulam tells you, and Rav Baruch Shalom Alshech, one of his disciples, one of his sons, said very clearly is, get together with a small group of people who also understand what's going on, and make a group like that, and then you have like, I think it was Rav Baruch Shalom used to say upstairs and downstairs. So when we're downstairs in the basement, meaning hiding, secretly learning Kabbalah, which we don't have to do anymore in this generation. They used to have to hide it, because if you told somebody, let's all share everything, they'd say, get out of here, what are you, crazy? So they couldn't even tell somebody the truth. And so now what we're trying to do is we're trying to live in communities where we are convinced, or we want to be convinced, that living like this is really the problem, and that there's something beautiful waiting for us if we just figure out how to do it. And you have to get together with people who are very serious about it and start sharing amongst yourself. And now, do groups of Kabbalists open up a joint bank account? No, we don't do that. Okay, there might be some places. Or Haganuz is very communal community, but I don't know that they do that either. But the point is that we start after necessity. We start at the point of we don't start by telling people that they should give more than 10% of their money away, because we're dealing with the internal world, and so we're dealing with the ability to, like, your emotional state and whether or not how you're feeling about things. And so when that happens, you'll figure out how much of your money you need to give away and how much you need to keep. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to reach a desire and a awareness where we start to do this, and as we start to come out of our egos, we start to realize how much better it is, and then we're on, like, off to the races. If you would have 3 or 4 steps, aliyahs inside of yourself, and you would to have access to one of your higher souls that you never had before, no one would have to tell you anything anymore. You would be off to trying to get more of that, because the same way that we all run after money, or we all run after respect, no one needs to tell you about that, right? Nobody needs to tell you that. And so once we need to prime the pump, and once we prime the pump and we start to see what this is, that we see that there's a ladder, and then when we see what happens when we climb this ladder, and we see how it feels and how great it is, then these answers become revealed to us internally, and the answers are self-evident, right? Nobody needs to tell you that it's good if people like you. Why do I have to explain that to you? You know that, right? And you feel it, and so it's self-evident. Okay. This is a conversation that never ends, by the way. The conversation we're having right now, we just have to continue having it and discussing it until we convince ourselves that this is something that we want attainment. We want to attain these qualities, as opposed to just living for a future redemption. And we live in a religious community, and yet you see that many, many people have not taken this step forward yet. They're living in a state of exile, and they're hoping for the future, but they're not they don't see that there's a tunnel inside of themselves, a ladder of consciousness, that they can start to do the work themselves and actually experience these things. And so that's what we're trying to do by learning Kabbalah openly. Okay, let's move on. You let me know when it's time to move to the next class? Okay. From this moment on, I am going to begin to work in a deep and focused way to love and do for others. When we say this to ourselves, the desire to receive begins to revolt. Then we begin to see where the spiritual work is and the need for emunah in God's greatness. Let me read it again. That's from Hakdama L'Chachma HaEmes, the introductory article of the Wisdom of Truth. I always thought it was very funny that Kabbalah is called the Wisdom of Truth. I say, well, what's the rest of the Torah? What are you telling me, lies? And so the answer is that, yeah, that's the way the Torah is. If you don't like the answer you're getting, then you get a better answer. But if you are happy with the answer you're getting, then people leave you alone. You speak English? Okay, good. Is that your father, the guy who comes here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you look like him.
Yeah,
that's your father? Amazing. He's a great guy. Okay, amazing. Very good. What's your name? Benjamin? Amazing. Let me read this again. From the moment on, I am going to begin to work in a deep and focused way to love and do for others. When we say this to ourselves, the desire to receive begins to revolt. Then we begin to see where the spiritual work is and the need for emunah in God's greatness. Okay? So in the Torah, I can't look all the way there because I don't have the cameras. If you want to sit closer, you can sit here. I can talk to you straight. Thank you so much. Okay, it's good. So in the Torah, there's a story. We have a story about Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu is going to Paro. And when he goes to Paro, he says to the Pharaoh in Egypt, he says, let my people go. And then Paro's response is to be even worse to his slaves, to the Jewish people. So he was giving them it was a very rough situation over there. But then when Moses came to Pharaoh and said, I want my people we want to leave you, we want to leave Egypt, then he started to become very nasty and very mean and give them double work, triple work, right? So then the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, they came to Moshe and they got angry at him. And they said, what did you go to Pharaoh, and tell him, what did you start up with Pharaoh for? Now that you started up with him, now he's really upset with us. And now he's treating us really much worse. It was bad before, but now it's even worse because you went to Pharaoh and you said that you want freedom. So this is what the Baal Shem is telling us here. He's telling us that when you start up with the ego, and you tell your ego, I don't want to do anything for any reward for you, for the ego. Paro is the ego, right? We know the hidden meaning of Paro in Egypt is the ego. You can read the whole story, and every time you see the word Paro, just say ego. And every time you see the word Moshe, just translate it as the desire to transcend my ego. The desire for love, unity, and transcendence, right? Communion with God. Read that instead, and you read the story, you realize all of a sudden that this is the same thing that we're learning in Kabbalah, but they just don't tell people because they don't want people to be upset if they're not ready for this, to hear this message. So when we start up with our egos and we say, I'm doing this for no good reason, no good reason for you, no selfish reason. There's no selfish reward in this. So the Baal Shem is telling you, do that. Say that to yourself, and then you will see how much you need God. You will see. So it says in the Talmud, the reward for lifting 5 pounds is 10 pounds. Meaning that if you're good in measure of 5 measures of being good, 5 points, the way that God is going to reward you in that, and that you're willing to see that you're not a good person, is by showing you that you're doubly not a good person. So think about that, the opposite of what we understand as well. So you're going to come and you're going to say, you know what, I realized I was a little bit selfish. Oh, you're admitting that you're a little bit selfish? Let me show you how selfish you are. And so if the Baal Shem is telling you, people want to learn Kabbalah, everybody's like, Kabbalah, and they want to learn, but they don't really want to learn Kabbalah. They want to feel that they're doing something secret, and they want to feel that they're doing something important. But here the Baal Shem is telling you, try to do something for no good reason other than you're just trying to help somebody else. No one is going to find out about it. No one's going to think you're a good person. No one's going to give you a reward. God's not going to give you a reward in heaven. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. The only thing that's going to happen is that some guy he's unpopular. Nobody talks to him. He doesn't smell good. He sits by himself in the synagogue, and if he's not even a nice person, and nobody likes him, and you're going to be friendly to him for no reason when nobody's around, and you're just going to make him happy for no reason. Try to do that, and then when you do that, God's going to show you, yeah, okay, this is what I want you to do. And step by step by step, God will take away your selfishness. And in its place, you'll feel unity, love, compassion, community, eternity. All the things that we want from everything. Everybody goes surfing and mountain climbing because they want to feel that little bit of 5 minutes of feeling that they're like alive or that they're part of the entire nature, right? That feeling is in what Kabbalah is offering you, what the Torah and Mitzvahs is offering you. That feeling of transcendence, that feeling of unity, that feeling of being safe, that no one's going to take anything away from you and you have everything. Esav came to Yaakov, the two brothers, right? One of them was the ego and the other one was the transcendent, right? These were the two, right? The two forces in Kabbalah. These were energies. And Esav said, I have so much. He was big-shotting off. And Yaakov Avinu answered to him, he goes, I have everything. So if you have, some people they're eating a tuna fish sandwich and they feel completely fulfilled and connected to the universe and happy. and somebody has like $400 sushi, and they feel miserable, they feel lonely, they feel upset, right? So that's Esav and that's Yaakov. So we have to, that's what the Torah is our ability and the beauty. There's magic trick on top of magic trick on top of magic trick in the Torah. So one of the tricks is that Esav and Yaakov, they don't go away. Both of them stay there. Both of them become. We have Marasa Machpelah is the cave of the patriarchs. Is a double. It went off.
No.
Is a double-sided cave. Hold on, people. It's a double-level cave. So what's the secret of the double-level cave? Is that God wants to give us the physical world, our material world, our egoistic natures, our name, your own personal existence, and the transcendent on top of it. We get both. That's why in Judaism we're not trying to destroy the ego. We're trying to get the ego to work for the transcendent. Right? Two forces, one on top of the other. You okay? So we're not trying to destroy Esav. What we're trying to do is we're trying to harness our physical worlds and our spiritual worlds and put them both together, working in unison. The finite and the infinite together, right? You can think of it as 0 and 1, Tiferet and Keter. One is on, one is off, one is on, you look at one and you look at the other, right? So we have both of these qualities at the same time. And so it's a very beautiful thing. And so the only thing that we have to do is believe that there's a reason to do this. Okay, is it time to move to the next class? Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay, we're going to move to another class now. So